my God.
This morning, misery in Texas.
It's really freezing. It's horrible.
Millions statewide spending another night in the dark without electricity, heat, and for a growing number, running water. Flooding homes, only adding to the nightmare. State officials offering little guidance on when any of it will be over.
Shalom Yasharahla. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, to the 144,000 elect, and to the 1/3 of all men, women, and children of the nation of Yasharahla that are coming back to these law, statutes, and commandments in these last days. In Texas Black Swan Blackout, everything went wrong at once. These are the signs of the times. As you can see, there was a huge blackout that occurred in Texas, and they're calling it the Black Swan Blackout due to the winter storm that swept across America. Texas was hit the worst. They were hit so bad that the power grid went out. And when the power grid goes out, not only do Texas residents lose power, but they also lose their ability to use water. They lose the internet. They immediately go back to the 1800s. And this is signs of more birth pains that the Most High is shutting down this place for all the iniquities that have transpired since the beginning of time, especially in Babylon. Now, don't think that this is an isolated issue, because what you are seeing is not limited to only Texas. Every state in this country is subjected to the same risk, and the reason why is because all of the electrical grids across the United States work the same. But the main problem is there has been no effort to maintain or have any level of redundancy with the power grids, which means if your power grid goes out in your state or in your local area, the expected turnaround time could be months or even years if there is a complete and total power grid failure. Now, let's just dive a little bit into why it's that way. So these electrical grids have what you would call transformers. What is a transformer? You may see these when you're driving on these back roads, or you're on the highway and you see like these huge plants, power plants, and they're full of these antenna looking like structures. These are power grids. Okay, these are power centers that distribute power throughout the land, and the way they are able to distribute power in long distances is by the use of transformers. Okay, so here, these are the pictures of what a transformer looks like. Okay, so these basically amplify the electrical currents that pass through our neighborhoods. And when these transformers go out, that is what directly causes a blackout. Now, this has been an issue for a very long time. Not the fact that we have transformers, but the fact that implementing preventative measures or backup procedures or just some kind of safeguard against what happens if your transformer goes out, there's been no effort by the powers that be to create a plan or strategy into backing these things up, which means that we're only left with what we have. So if this were to happen on a very large scale, imagine how long it would take before before the entire country would be able to come back to bring its power back. Basically, if this were to happen, there would be no coming back, because the way a blackout affects our daily lives is so impactful that we may not be able to survive a blackout simply because we just lost our way with nature. So these millennials who are always on their phones don't really know how to live in nature anymore. They wouldn't know what to do. And when you don't know what to do in an event of a total blackout that may last for months, then you're in a situation like the purge, where people are going to fend for themselves and do whatever it is that they feel is necessary to survive. There's a guy named Michael Maloof who talked about this in 2013. And here's what he said.
Called A Nation Forsaken, EMP, the escalating threat of an American catastrophe. And this EMP, of course, could come if a rogue country or any kind of country detonates an atomic bomb in the atmosphere. But we could also get hit, of course, by an X-flare from the sun. Let's welcome back Michael Maloof. Michael, thanks for joining us. Important day today.
Well, thanks for having me.
The National Power Grid test is probably very smart for them to do, but do they know something that they're not telling us, Michael?
I think they're worried. There's been enough noise now. They're looking at it more from a cyber attack, but also the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, which is both of which can happen, can cause the same effect of knocking out the grid, except that the EMP is much worse. You can always counter the potential cyber attack, but an EMP, unless you actually harden the electronics and what have you, it can be out for months and years. And I think that there's been more noise coming out of the Pentagon recently about potential for cyber attack, and that's what they're about, and certainly it can be done. There's been threats made by terrorist groups to, and even lone wolves to launch a cyber attack against the grid and against any of our other critical infrastructures that our modern-day society rely upon, all of which are premised on the grid, but they're all life-sustaining for our society, like telecommunications and what have you. All of it depends upon that grid, and it's very vulnerable. And when a squirrel can fall on a line in Ohio and knock out the East Coast, there's something wrong, terribly wrong. And I think that the utilities have been fooling themselves somewhat because they believe that they can handle such events. They can probably certainly handle events like a lightning strike and what have you if it's localized. But if you have an EMP over a wide geographical area, there's no way that they're going to be able to control that, and it will certainly take months and years. And the real serious problem is that it's going to affect 90% of the population, and your urban centers could be wiped out.
And there you have it. So as you can see, Michael is pointing out the vulnerabilities in the national power grid, and he is trying to identify all the potential threats, such as an electromagnetic pulse due to a solar flare or some cyber attack from some foreign country. But the fact of the matter is, if the power grid is taken out, it could have catastrophic implications on our society. And it's important to have safeguards and the necessary protections, not only technically, but physically, to protect the power grid. Otherwise, just within the drop of a dime, this place could be over with. But the one thing that he doesn't even mention, and this is what he should fear the most, is the power of the Most High. Because this blackout wasn't caused by a lightning storm. It wasn't caused by an EMP. It wasn't caused by a cyber attack. It was caused by a snowstorm. Therefore, it doesn't even have to be an attack from some foreign country. It could just be the Most High just sending a storm over this entire country. Now, going back to this article, as you can see here, in Texas Black Swan blackout, everything went wrong at once. Why are they calling it a Black Swan blackout? Let's see what a Black Swan is. According to Black Swan theory, or theory of Black Swan events, is a metaphor that describes an event that comes as a surprise, has a major effect, and is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact with the benefit of hindsight. So basically, this blackout was caused by a snowstorm, and there's a reason why it got this bad. That's basically what they're saying. The finger pointing began immediately. It was the frozen wind turbines that foolishly replaced traditional sources. No. Fossil fuels were at fault. No. Texas' deregulated power market, unique in the country, had allowed companies to skimp on the maintenance and upgrades. As hours ticked by and millions more were plunged into frozen darkness, a more sober reality emerged. The greatest forced blackout in U.S. history, as this event has almost certainly become, was the result of a systemic and multifaceted failure. There are no promises of when the power will be restored, and little likelihood that the episode won't be repeated in a corner of the country hard hit by climate change. So you see that? This feels like a technical design failure. Michael Weber, who founded the Weber Energy Group at the University of Texas at Austin and serves as Chief Science and Technology Officer at French utility Engie. So they're all pointing to the flaws in these power plants. The power plants aren't being maintained. There weren't any upgrades. So these power grids are still functioning off of probably outdated technology. So it is extremely vulnerable. This place is extremely vulnerable when it comes to power. This is the book of Amos, chapter 5 and verse 18. Woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. To what end is it for you? The day of the Lord is darkness and not light. All these people want the Lord to come back. They want to be delivered. They want to be saved. They want to see the day of the Lord. But the day of the Lord is nothing good. When all hell breaks loose and the Lord comes back to destroy this place, it is going to be nothing but darkness. You're not going to see light on that day. Not only is this spiritual darkness, but this is physical darkness. And Texas got a sneak preview of what those days are going to be like. You know, I know somebody who's in Texas, and he said that it took 3 days for the power to come back. Imagine being in no power for 3 days, let alone a month or several months. Nothing but darkness. When people are left to their own minds and their own carnal instincts, it's only a matter of time before they're going to result to darkness and not light. But you who are awake, you who are in the truth, you who do have the Holy Spirit, we're not going to be in darkness. Why? Because the Lord is going to be there for us. The Lord is going to deliver us out of this situation, no matter how bad it is. And here's where I'll say that there has to be a fine balance, right? Because a lot of people, you know, they're prepping, they're stocking up on food, they're getting their backup generators, they're getting armed up, they're doing all these things in case things go south. But it's important to understand that the number one thing that you need to be doing to counteract a situation like this is keeping the law, statutes, and commandments and calling upon the name of the Lord. That's your number one strength, because you're not going to be able to deliver yourself, because there's going to be two types of people. There's going to be those who are spiritual and they understand that their fate depends on the Lord. So they're going to pray, they're going to fast, they're going to call on the Lord, and they might prep a little bit, but they're not going to put their faith in their preparation, their physical preparation. They're not going to put their faith in their stockpiles of food. They're not going to put their faith in all of the gear that they have, because that's not what's going to deliver them. It's only the Lord that's going to deliver them. And then there's going to be other people who rely on those things, and they're going to use those carnal things to their advantage. And yeah, it might get them far. I mean, it might get them past a few waves, but eventually there's going to be a target on their back, right? Because the Lord has it out for them. So it doesn't matter how many weapons you have, it doesn't matter how much food you have, you still won't be able to survive those times if the Lord is not dealing with you. That's the point. So when you see these things, you have to understand the type of times that we're coming in. See, these are birth pains. As you can see, as every year goes by, we notice that some of these storms are getting more severe. Certain things that weren't happening before are happening now, right? Because the earth is changing, the universe is changing. We are entering in a new time and space continuum where things are more extreme, things are polarized, right? So if you haven't been experiencing earthquakes, you might live in a state that might only get a few tremors that aren't even worth talking about on the Richter scale. And then, but now you're getting earthquakes all of a sudden, you know? And look at Texas. Texas rarely sees snow. And then all of a sudden now, a snowstorm comes in and completely wipes out the power grid. So what more will it be when we go deeper into this area of the universe that we're in right now, when everything is extremely heightened? Every storm is magnified. Every earthquake is magnified, right? The technology, if there's no type of upgrades, it's not sustainable. I mean, you can only work within the means of your own power. But who is your power? That's going to be the question in these last days. Do you think you have the power to survive on your own? Or do you understand that you need the Lord to survive this darkness that's about to come upon the face of this earth? This is the book of Lamentations, chapter 4 and verse 17. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. There's nothing that America has done that could actually save us as a people. It doesn't matter who we have voted for office. It doesn't matter what wars we fought in. It doesn't matter what movements that we've participated in within this nation. Things don't seem to ever change for us. So why would we put our faith in the fact that they would take the necessary measures to ensure that a blackout won't happen again? Who's to say that maybe they want the blackout to happen? You know, the Georgia Guidestone says that they need to limit the population below 500 million. If a structure that has that type of instruction on it can stand in this country, then why would you put your faith anything that this nation has to offer? So far, the only thing that it's done is that it's led to our own destruction. So y'all better stop playing with the Most High. And I'm talking to you people who know the truth, you people who know what's going on, you people who know that there's wickedness going on in high places. You're aware that they're defiling the food. You're aware they're trying to blot out the sun. You're aware of all these things, but yet you still refuse to put on your fringes. You still refuse to keep the commandments of the Lord. You refuse to keep the Sabbath. You refuse to do the things that's going to protect you from what's to come. If y'all keep taking this truth for granted, this is your chance. This is your chance right now. Don't wait until all hell breaks loose to call upon the name of the Lord, because he's watching you right now. He's watching to see if these things, you can identify these things and come back to his law, statutes, and commandments, you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, because nobody else is going to do it. Everybody else is just going to dabble around the truth, but they're not going to keep these commandments. So protect yourself, keep the faith, and come back to these law, statutes, and commandments and serve the Lord, man. That's it. That's the end of this video. If one person was edified, the job has been done. Till the next video, Shalom.